Meeting of the we'll call to order this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee for the Town Council. Know that the meeting is being recorded and will be posted later on the town's Facebook page. So we will, if okay, kick off public comment. If anybody from the public.
Yeah, I'm Carl Hunt, CPC. If you have any questions on the CPC item, please ask me.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just to listen.
Yep. Excellent. All right, so we'll jump right into legislation referred. Can I refer to you for?
Sure, and if I
item-
can't answer it, I know that Ashley can.
Excellent.
Like the two of us.
So I'll refer to you for order OFY 25-060 capital plan transfers for FY 2026.
So as you know, the council adopted the capital approved plan earlier this year, and it includes the vehicles that we needed to be either replacing or paying for because the town typically at least purchases most of its equipment. So being prepared for FY 26, which starts July 1st, we're asking for transfer from both the capital stabilization funds and ambulance receipts for appropriation to be able to pay for the payments that are due that you see listed of the uses for next year. You can see some what year they're each in. The total is $633,230.93.
And the amount listed, sorry, is just for this year.
Just for 26.
Put it up to the committee. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I listened to the Finance Committee meeting the other night. You went over it in detail there, so all of this looks good to me.
I have one question for the town of Rainham High School purchase. How many more years do we have on that? Do you know?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say 7, that this is number 5 of 12.
Oh, is that how it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
5
so
to
like
12.
first fire engine is the lease payment 2 of 5 and so on.
So this will be, so we own all our schools now.
We don't own the high school. That's owned by the district. The middle school.
So
and
they
the
pay
elementary.
half and we pay half?
It's probably not that simple. It's probably based more on the formula and the split of the number of students and a number of
Okay.
other factors. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head. I don't know, Ashley, if you happen to know that.
It's 5% like every.
I
Okay,
mean, it's probably both towns are paying into that, and also if MSBA, the state program paid for some of it, that goes into that too.
okay, thank you.
I just have a question. Are any of these vehicles add-ons or are they all replacement
Wasn't here,
during any?
don't know.
You know,
I'm assuming generally they're replacements, but that would be a Lori question. I don't have the answer
Okay.
to.
I was going to say it is replacements because we have our fleet schedule and we do certain years where we replace vehicles.
But to your knowledge, we're not adding any
Yeah,
additional vehicles.
to my knowledge.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, I'm being aye. Excellent. I will defer to the town manager on order OFY 25-061 contractual buyouts.
So we have 2 firefighters who are going out of disability retirement, and 1 library position person who there was a resolution of a pay dispute over the rate of pay the person was hired at that make up a total of payments due of $118,700, for which the money will come out of the employee liability fund, which is set aside for situations like this. The 2 firefighters, don't know their tenure, but there's a scale in the union contract that covers how many days of sick time they're allowed to be paid based on when they were hired and so on. We have been phasing it out. I actually sent some information this afternoon in more detail about that, but still, these are long-term employees who are owed in total that amount of money.
And just to be clear, because it sounds like you already just said that, but these are previous contracts which we already have to honor.
Yes.
Because I know that some people, they're concerned about, sick time, buyback and
Sure.
whatnot. And this is a contract which is already negotiated and we have to just fulfill our end of
Correct.
the bargain here.
In the last contract, that Ashley sent me the information this afternoon, I noticed in 2019, the town said anyone hired after that point will not get this at all. And before that, there was even changes to what it had been. So the town has been slowly changing it. But as I said, my assumption is these are long tenured employees who were hired before those changes went into effect. So they're due their current rate of pay, however many hours they're eligible for in the schedule.
Would it be possible to get almost a listing of those?
I have a copy of it. You want?
That's the details. That doesn't tell you the information about each employee and
Right.
Yeah, I don't need the information, but I'm just curious to know how much more liability we have for.
I'm sure we have that calculation because we have to keep it for the audit and know what our liability is. But off the top of my head, I don't know the total.
Is that possible? to get
Yeah,
that? I'm
yeah.
just be curious to see what
Yeah.
the liability is.
Sure. And that's why we, put money into the fund every year and plan for the retirements. And we try to, as much as we can, ask people to tell us what their intentions are so we can make sure that we are funded for the ones that we're still responsible for.
And that would be like comprehensive town employees. X amount. Is there a way we could?
Well, I mean, we don't know each year how much time someone will take based on what they have and what they earn. It can be it continually changes.
Right.
But we have we can take a snapshot in time and say, if Joe Smith, started working for the town in 1998 and has this much sick time, his current rate of pay, we would know how much if he retired, what he would be owed.
Yeah.
But ask that same calculation at the end of the year, if Joe had to take some sick time and whatever, it might be different. But we do have to calculate that for the audit. That's,
Yeah, it's called a compensated absent report, and I keep that up to date quarterly, so it could get.
And the employee thank you,
Mhm.
sorry. And the employee liability fund gets funded through the town budget?
through the, we have our free cash certified. As you recall, we put a certain amount in each one of the various funds. This is part of it, because you know what the outstanding obligation is. We have a pretty good sense of what's coming each year. We need to make sure we fund it to be able to take care of it.
So we adjust based on that?
Yes. That's a calculation the finance does for you every year.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, Stephanie does that, she's trying to. Gets deeper and deeper.
Okay, I'll defer to the town manager for order OFY 25062 loan authorization Plymouth Street Wells project.
So these are the infamous wells 10A and 10B that produce the water that has iron and manganese in it. We were applied for and got approval to be on the DEP's intended use plan, which gives approval for various projects throughout the state to be eligible for low interest or loan forgiveness loans to be able to pay for this project. So we haven't finished design yet. You'd already financed that this year with our own funds. But the engineer's estimate when this was done was 7.4 million. And so in order to be able to stay on this plan and be eligible to borrow the money when we need it, we need to have this loan authorization in place by the end of June, which is why it's in front of you now. And the description at the bottom tells you a little more about that. We are on a separate track filing for a grant that might help offset some or all of this cost. We're following both tracks. But we want to make sure this is in place because if the grant doesn't come through, we need to borrow it all. We need to be ready to do that at the lowest cost that we can.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Do you have, are you tracking the water and sewer projects in one location? So is of the $130 million that we need for upgrades, whatever it is, I don't know the exact amount. Is there one place where all of this is included and sort of we can look at chipping away at that? Assuming this is just a very small piece of that.
Yes, we're also in the process of a rate study
All
for
right,
both water and sewer. And so tracking all the projects that we have and the cost, the timing and what the rate might be so we can make a very informed recommendation about what the rates that we're charging users need to be. in order to be able to charge the correct amount to cover all of the obligations that we have. How'd I do, Ashley?
We definitely do. So,
Yeah,
I
yes.
second that, yep.
I mean, I'm sure finance has it. I don't have that, but that's part of what they do is make sure, because we've got to charge the correct amount to be able to pay these obligations when they come due. So similar to the trucks.
And it matches different as the enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah, we have different funds for it, so.
Yeah, it's part of the enterprise fund. Yes. Which covers more than just the loan payments for the big projects. It's also the operating expenses
Right.
day to day to produce clean water and treat sewage. And all that goes into that, electricity, people, some charges from the general fund for the portions of people that work, support it. Because it doesn't have its own HR director or its own finance team. So all those go into it. And that's all in accordance with state law that allows us to establish and run enterprise funds.
By the next meeting, do you think it's possible to look at that enterprise fund? I'm just curious to see what that revenues versus expenses looks like and how we're kind of trending towards that in
Absolutely.
the big picture of.
Okay. Yeah, and we do put on the monthly reports on the town
Yeah.
website, so you could see that too. So I believe April's up there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd look at that, the budget that just got approved for next year
Yes.
also is a part of that.
Sure, yeah. It
Um,
was separate.
Yeah, but I say, I'm very glad when we funded and we're going ahead with the rate study because it is very complicated. There are a lot of moving parts. And especially as the costs for both of these enterprises have gone up significantly to meet all the federal and state requirements. We need to make really sure that we're charging the right amount.
Okay. I'll ask more about it when we get to the discussion.
I have a question. How often do we have to change the pumps? Because I know we're changing the pumps here and when they did a presentation, they talked that our pumps pump more because we have to go up to the tanks. So are we using more pumps because we're working hard to pump storage water tanks?
We regularly rehabilitate or replace the wells, but whether the pump inside it needs to be replaced or not, I'd have to have a Zoo or Jonas to answer for you.
Okay, because we are replacing the pumps for wells 10A and 10B, yeah.
Well, we're not necessarily replacing. I mean, this is a more generic overview to make sure we don't leave anything out, so they can't come back later and say, sorry, you can't borrow for this particular thing, because
Okay.
you didn't include it. But basically, the project is to run a new water main from where this location is to the High Street plant, and then make modifications to the 2-year-old plant in order to be able to, when the water gets there, take the iron and manganese out of it,
Yeah,
so that then not clear water can be then put back in the distribution system to go out to everybody's
so they
house,
threw the pumps in there just in case we need them.
probably. Yeah,
Okay,
you don't want to box yourself into such a narrow description that you then find out you can't borrow for everything you need to.
no, I remember maybe it was the environmental when she came, she was saying that if we're gonna do stuff, we should move it down level because we're overusing our pumps by pumping it uphill to our water. source.
Possibly,
Yeah.
no one would have ever let me into engineering school, I can promise you.
Yeah.
But, for instance, at Carver's Pond, we just replaced a number of pumps there as part of maintaining our operating system.
Yeah.
So, and then if you look at the capital plan, that will tell you all the things that we're planning to do and when they're slated to happen or should happen. So,
Sounds good.
The 7.4 million, that's an estimate from the engineers.
Right.
When would we anticipate seeking bids for actual numbers?
probably towards the end of this year, ideally we'll go out to bid end of 25, early 26, and the project would happen in 26. I know the water department really wants to see it happen before the summer because we don't want to be turning on these wells again and impacting anybody with discolored water if we don't have to. But the last schedule I saw said it could take as much as a year, which surprises me a little bit. Because we're just in the survey and design phase now, we don't have all the answers to when and how and exactly what.
Mhm.
Which is just timing.
Well, it's good that we're being proactive about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, we are able to turn off 10A and B because the wells that we just replaced, 5R and 9R, are producing like around 220 gallons a minute, both of them. So the tanks are full right now, so it's awesome. And we started flushing of that area tonight. But I don't know that we'll be able to go through the whole summer.
Yeah.
With having enough. And that's had a lot of rain, but whether that's what we're pulling out of the ground is not, there's not an exact relationship.
Yeah, I was saying, well, I was gonna talk about the Duxbury on Curve Street, that big, I don't know, they're building 150 houses,
Okay,
and they're all having like 4 bedrooms. And I
Okay.
heard people concerned about the water once they all get back, because that's like 4 bedrooms per house.
okay.
So I don't know if we've looked into that.
I'm sure we have, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
because that's a
Details.
huge chunk, and that's on, they might be, because they're behind me, that Curve Street, so they might be on those, like 10A and 10B. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, like I said, the goal is not to turn those wells back on unless we
Yeah.
absolutely have to. But we weren't able to maintain the tanks earlier this spring, and so we made the tough decision to do that.
Yeah. But hopefully the departments talk.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting all these, I mean, because each house is 4 bedrooms, so that's a lot.
Yep.
Start at 6 or 6:15?
6.
6? My apologies.
All right, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. 0. Okay, defer budget order, OFY 26006, CPA reserve accounts.
So every year, every community that is involved in CPC has to appropriate monies to each of the 3 buckets that the state law requires, which are 10% each to open space, historic resources, and community housing. I will say open space includes recreation. So this order is taking $1,035,000 and it is distributing 10% to each of those 3 areas, as well as 5% to the administrative expenses that is used at the discretion of the CPC committee. And then also is appropriating money to the debt payments for 2 projects that were previously approved. One is the renovation of this building, and the other is the Keith Homestead.
First question, do we have an outlook for how much further we have to pay off these 2?
Yes, it was one of the slides in the presentation for the
I
budget.
remember seeing the academy.
Yeah. So someone at the other end can answer the specifics.
I'm fine with it. Do we need to suspend the rules? Take a
Yeah,
motion.
motion to suspend the rules.
Second,
Second,
all approved?
Aye.
aye.
Yeah, the Academy building is 36, FY 36 it pays off. And the Keith Homestead pays off FY 26,
36 and 26.
yes. And should anything happen that CPC money no longer comes in, the general fund has to pick up that balance.
Well, we have the rules suspended. Can I ask Mr. a question?
Sure.
It's about the Keith Homestead. So that's originally like was 41 acres, so we bought it, but not all that lot. They split that.
We purchased a large parcel that was already laid out for housing. That house was in it. And then that house was sold back out. So the land around that is now conservation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That's nice house.
Dr. Howell, will we have the rules suspend anything further?
Only one I asked.
I have one question while they're still suspended. I know that you can allocate a certain percentage to the 3 buckets and the rest is to be spent kind of at your discretion. Is that what the $320,000 in budgetary reserves is going to?
Yeah, what happens there is, this is a spreadsheet that the town finance department put together.
Mm.
So the surcharge is 2% after the first $100,000 of evaluation. So a $500,000 house only pays 2% on 400,000 of assessed value. So that's, and there's other abatements that go in, elders, that kind of stuff, veterans. The state match comes from a fee that is at the debt registry of deeds. So anytime a deed filing occurs, it's $50. That money goes to a state trust fund, which the Department of Revenue then distributes in the year following. So they provide an estimate of what we should do, and this year was 15.9%. So I think we rounded it up, but basically the 900,000 comes from the town in terms of estimated revenues. We are typically 15% lower on our estimate than our actuals. And then the state matches a year behind, so that's pretty accurate. But this year, the year we're ending, we estimated 100,000 last year. We got 170,000 in fees. It's about a 39% return on our investment over time. It's fee money. Have I answered all your questions?
Yes.
Yes, so when you take the required 10%, take that out of the budget and you take the administrative fund out, it doesn't match up to the 1.35 million. 1.035 million. So in order to access that money in the fiscal year that we're in, we put it in this undesignated reserve. So we can, in fact, if we had to bond, for example, which we fortunately don't have to, the Hanson Farm, we could have used money from this year that we hadn't done anything with, in addition to the budgetary reserves, to pay a cash up front and reduce the bond. So we have a lot of fiduciary responsibilities that we're responsible for.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're up. Excellent. We can move on to item D, discussion. So I thought it would be helpful for us to talk a little bit about what our hopes and dreams are for budget and finance going forward. And while Ashley is here, if there's anything that we can look to the finance department for these meetings to better prepare us with overall planning, kind of how we're going to go forward.
I'd
So I
like to get that in the charter. It says that we can, I think it's twice a month, that expense and revenues.
General ledger in the charter.
Yeah, I'd love to get that. So that you wait you can see all the expenses and
Right.
revenues and keep track of that.
I'd love for us to be able to provide even a short report to the council, maybe not bi-weekly, but at least once a month, just like a quick overview that's supported by Lori's department, just so we can give that revenue expense, high level, kind of where things are at, where we're going type of thing. And so I don't mind putting that back on myself to kind of manage and bring forward, but I thought we could talk about it here and then bring that kind of report to the bigger council to give them.
Are you looking
updates.
for a narrative besides the numbers?
No, I think we can come up with a narrative during this meeting.
Okay.
Going forward, but I think having the revenues and expenditures will be helpful for that meeting to discuss what we'll bring to the larger council.
Now, would this be a good time to discuss how we can make sure that if the override goes through, that the money for the roads goes into a stabilization fund, some kind of fund, so it has to be every year, because a lot of people are going, yeah, they say the roads, but it really is. But we could write up an order that it definitely goes into a fund every year.
Well, you're gonna appropriate, you have to do a supplemental appropriation once the override passes. And to distribute it to the places it needs to go, 6,034,000, whatever, into the school account. Police, fire, library, DPW, I mean, I would defer to Lori and Ashley as to what account number we use for the 500,000 this year. But then I would say the budget resolution that you passed in the fall was a great, I think, a vehicle to say, and we want to make sure that we see 500,000 plus 2.5% or whatever it is you say, going into a dedicated account for that going forward. We want to,
Yeah.
if that's what the council chooses to do.
Well, I mean, that's what we told the residents we were gonna do.
Right, so something that, I mean, that to me is the direction to the town manager, say, this is what we want to see, these are our priorities in the budget. You know, please go forth and work with your team to try to figure out how that's going to happen,
Okay, thank you.
is my suggestion.
Yeah, the concern that some residents have asked me about is that, you know, this council decides to appropriate $500,000 this year in an account.
Mhm.
What power does this council have to maintain that? Can the next council that it gets elected decide to do away with that account move that money around because an override puts it into the general fund as opposed to something like a debt exclusion.
It's possible. I mean, but
I
that's.
don't
the
want to strike fear in anybody's hearts, but this is a
No, but I
question
mean,
that's been asked.
My thought in looking at the charter would be to codify it through the free cash and create the account that way, because I think we'd have more control over codifying it if we create an account that.
well,
goes
you,
from free
every year
cash.
you move everything to free cash and the town has followed a formula, I guess, Ashley, to decide how much goes into each one. You could, I guess you could choose to do it that way. And you could, I guess you could set up a road fund and then appropriate from there. And you could decide to put, I mean, ideally, you make 500,000 one year and next year maybe you can make it 600 and you can make it, you can slowly grow it as your revenue will allow to be able to start to make more ground with the paving that you're doing.
I agree, it's establishing that stabilization fund for the road. We'll have to go through you guys.
I actually responded to a few residents who said the same thing.
Yeah,
But I mean, that goes for anything we do, right? Like any ordinance can override.
But
yeah,
it makes it more
So-
difficult, and then they really have to explain to the residents why
I
they
think
do
that's,
that.
that's the key,
So
right?
that's why when I was looking at the stabilization fund seemed to be the most solid one.
Right.
Yeah,
And then if residents see that that money isn't going there every year,
yeah,
They
and
can
if
ask
the
for it.
council decides to take it out, they're gonna have to explain
yes,
to the residents why they are.
right.
But I'd like to see that set up, because it's a promise we made.
But one reason, if one year you didn't have as much free cash as you had in the past, then you might have to make tough choices about whether you could fully
and
fund
pull out
that.
of that and then say, sorry about the
Right.
roads this year. And that's the conversation that people
Oh,
are
of
afraid of.
course.
Yeah,
I mean, there's other things that we're not, maybe like our OPEB liability, we're not nearly funding that. I mean, I know the plan is to more fully fund it once the pension's paid off. But that's still, that's a looming number. It's 40 million?
I don't know on top of my head. Maybe I do. Oh, yes, I do have that. The OPEB, yes, we're at 1.4 million right now. That's
We
it.
have 1.4
Yeah.
million. We need like 40.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
So just making sure that, you know, there's, I think giving the next town manager the direction that you want to see progress made on these areas and a definite plan for how road money will be set aside, whichever vehicle the group decides is the right one. I think is a great idea.
yeah, because we'll need obviously a series of debt exclusions to pay for the road work that we're going to.
Well, the
need.
bigger projects that can't be just, that are not simply a mill and overlay and maybe fix a catch basin.
Yeah,
That's a big difference from, say, some of the streets we've been talking about that need water and sewer and drainage and sidewalks and so that's gonna be possibly an enterprise fund and stabilization or general fund project or debt exclusion.
Mhm.
Those will take a different, approach to, more comprehensive approach to those 6 or 7 roads that are really biggest challenges.
yes, I'd love to see us be proactive with the finance department on discussing scenarios of how we could tackle that, because I'd really love to chip away at that this year and to really put a mark on, you know, getting these roads improved and, you know, having a plan of whether or not the override passes or not, of how we're going to start chipping away at that and really making some measurable progress.
One of the things that Lori showed us that I thought was really helpful and was included in the budget is those debt exclusions that currently exist for residents, so the fire station and others, and when they expire.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if we, you know,
And drops off.
we won't be in these positions maybe 4 or 5 years from now, but at least if we can demonstrate to folks, this is when it should hit through the capital plan, which is where it should live, right? FY, whatever it may be, we can go for the full debt exclusion, or we could start parsing that out. I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah.
At least to show progress of,
Well, she with her team with the financial advisor can look at the overall, when are projects dropping off? When might there be, if you're trying to keep your tax rate that's the level, then when a project drops off, that might be an opportunity in that particular year to say, okay, we could do a debt exclusion for X
Mhm.
and still end up at the same amount, so it's not costing taxpayers more. It's also not costing them less, I get that. But, you know, if you're trying to limit the impact of people, you figure out when you have that opportunity.
Yeah, the goal isn't to have everything drop off. It's
No.
to, you know, hopefully with what people are paying, continue to make improvements with what they're already
Exactly, right.
paying so that they're getting, even more for their dollars.
Yeah, the flip side is sometimes you have to say to a particular project, I'm sorry, but you have to wait. You want to wait to, we're gonna plan for your project, but it's not gonna happen until this year because we've got to focus on something else first. Or we have to wait for something to be paid off.
Unfortunately, I feel like that's what's been done with the water and roads in town. So that's why we're where we are.
Well, I mean, we have a fairly, I think our overall debt ratio is fairly low for a community like this.
Mhm.
Not that anyone wants to pay more taxes and have it go up, but there's a certain amount that's appropriate in any community.
Yeah.
So finding that balance.
I wonder if, Ashley, if you know if there's any studies or things that we could look at for comparable towns in debt.
I could look that for you, because I don't, but
Yeah.
I definitely think the DLS website has
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
so.
You can
What
go
website?
down a very deep rabbit hole.
Yes.
There's a lot of.
You can slice and dice data all day long for all 351 communities.
Yeah.
That, and you can say, I want communities similar in size to me or similar in budget to me, and look at their debt ratios, and it'll spit you out reports all day long. That's great.
Very low debt ratio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is commendable on one level, but flip side of that is, are we really taking care of everything we're supposed to be taking care of? Like, where's the balance?
Anything further on the discussion piece? Anything else you would like to see?
No, I think that, just being proactive and setting out some targets of what we want to achieve is a great start. And just continuing to do that, as we kind of work along here throughout the next year.
Yeah.
I like the direction.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I know in talking to Debbie that there was a order in like 2011 that said the audit committee would become part of budget and finance. I was just curious if there's any thought to, I know we're gonna be talking to the auditors later today, whether there's some thought to this committee taking a greater role or establishing a separate committee. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where we decide as a council to go with in regard to the audit, if we want something more robust, if we want a separate audit with a third party, then I guess we would discuss amongst ourselves what would be the best course of action if we want to continue to oversee that or set up, I don't know if that would be an ad hoc or if it'd be a revitalization of a previously standing committee.
Well, I'd have to get the actual wording from Debbie. My impression was rather than having a separate audit committee, the charter assumed it was like, let's make it part of budget and finance.
Yeah, this committee absorbed that.
Yeah,
previous
so
committee.
that's why I was just curious.
I would like that. I think we could get a deep understanding of what they look at, what our money's going for. You know what I mean? You're working with the audit.
Yeah, would we take upon that responsibility or would we have a separate committee? I guess we would just, talk amongst ourselves as to what we want to do with that. Because what had happened was there was a previously separate committee and this committee absorbed the duties of that one.
I think it makes sense to be this committee.
Yeah, we're already involved in it.
When do you typically engage with the audit? A
So
couple
I
days
think
annually?
the contract, she said, goes one more
One
year
more year, yeah. Mhm.
with Roselli Clark. Not to say that you couldn't amend the contract and say you want some additional services, you want a deeper look into this or that. Probably could be arranged. And then after that contract's up, Lori and I talked about going out and looking for new auditors, just because it's good at practice to change
Fresh
every
eyes.
certain amount of time, just to make sure it's fresh eyes and so on. So that could be something the committee, or whatever committee can work on as well, would be part of.
Can we get a copy of the contract? It'd be helpful to see
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
currently offered in it and
Mhm.
take it from there.
So how often, I mean, could we meet with them before the next audit? Like
That was my
yeah,
question. When do
yeah.
you typically engage with them annually? Like,
So when
they
do they
start
usually
their
come
process?
in? Ashley?
So honestly, I'm not sure about that because I've only been here, gonna be on a year, so I couldn't give you the date, but I can let you know.
I mean, generally,
Like October?
first, the finance needs to close the books over the summer. And so once they close the books, the auditors will usually probably come in and start to set up how they want to, what their procedures are gonna be, what they're gonna want to look at. And then arrange a time to come back in and give finance a chance to pull together everything that they're looking for. Then continue through the year, do their audit and maybe come in once or twice or do some of the work remotely. And then produce a draft in,
Maybe like October, November, I would say.
yeah,
Around that time.
think it would be helpful to be engaged in that process. from our
Yeah.
standpoint.
I think it'd be really helpful.
Just
And I
to
mean, we
answer
can even-
questions.
Yeah,
And they're presenting tonight, so we could ask them some questions as well.
Yeah, I hope you'll ask them lots of questions. You should. You should.
Okay, so for next meeting, the audit contract, revenues and expenses. And we talked about that water enterprise piece. I hope we can just include that in the revenue expenses, but I'd love to see anything we have big picture for that in general. We have to figure out the roadways, depending on how things go next month, I guess.
yeah.
We're still waiting to see what this state budget will be for chapter 90.
Right.
Ideally, it's going up to 300 million, which would give us an extra 350,000.
Mhm.
So we'll be closer to about 1.1 a year, which would be very helpful. So
Is that another mile?
just about. Depending on what needs to be done, just about. Yeah, when you start being able to quote us pricing per month, per foot, I'm gonna start to worry.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further on the discussion piece?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to E, public comment. Any comments from the public?
Just you all members, this, when you do the sewer study, last year it went up 50% to the ratepayers. So just keep that in mind.
Well, the debt's going up 375%.
I understand that, but I don't think ratepayers can afford 50% every year.
The general fund would have to make up the difference. I'm just saying, I'm not trying
Just
to
saying.
argue with you, I'm just saying, if we don't want to charge the ratepayers, the general fund would have to, all taxpayers have to pick up the difference. Is how that works, just information.
If we had water and sewer commission in place, maybe we could get a handle on that.
We really need to fill out.
Yeah.
Our committees.
Because there were no rate increases for years, and the same thing happened with my condo. They didn't do 2007 to 2019. I bought my condo, and then they did 19, 20, and 21, boom, 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 and it was huge. And now we're at the point where we're going to do 3 to 5% a year, so everybody knows that, or else the condos are going to be unsaleable, and people
Right.
aren't going to be able to afford to live there anymore. 33% of the town is on sewer. That's
I understand.
the issue. It's not, if there were 50% of the town on sewer,
Right,
I
Rebecca?
agree, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's just,
But most of the new developments on sewer line.
I don't know off the top of my head,
Yeah,
but I mean, we're about to start phase 2, and it's gonna be more expensive than phase 1, and we're under consent order, so we don't have a choice, it's just a matter of,
The phosphorus report.
yeah, nitrogen's first, phosphorus is second, so that's gotta be, I mean, like, I'm just telling you the simple fact is if you don't, if the enterprise can't cover it, the general fund has to pick it up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I
so
mean, I
then,
guess I'm assuming that I know all new developments hooked up to the water. Most of them don't have the wells, because I see a lot of it when I watch the planning. So I kind of just.
and then
assumed
hook
it
up
was
these
sewer.
where any new developments help. You know,
Yeah,
they're,
well, they would add to, to
you know,
pay.
that adds to our balance, and so
Yeah.
part of the rate study is understanding what those are, and hopefully that mitigates the cost, but overall. I
And that's
mean,
what I was thinking, like, developments down Broad Street, they'll be both hooked up to this, the sewer, I am
They
assuming.
would,
So they'll help pay,
they will,
Yeah.
and so that goes into the calculation.
Yeah.
Where are we in the rate study piece right now?
Ashley, I know we kicked it off, do you know?
Yep, we did a kickoff, we provided the information that they needed, so they're doing their thing. So, and we're supposed to be at least meeting up next week or the week after, seeing where they're at, so it's all on their end right now.
Could you share with us what you shared with them?
Sure, it's a lot of information. We actually had to put it in a portal for them, like
Wow.
yeah, if you want it out, we can give it to you for
I
sure.
mean, I think more information is the better for us, but
Careful.
I don't
what you
think
wish
so.
for.
if there's some high level pieces of that, I think it would be great. So maybe
Okay.
we can parse through it. a
just the
little bit.
footnotes.
Yeah, just a footnote.
That's to the list.
Or if there's a list of what you provided, maybe not the actual documentation, we
Okay.
can look at the list, maybe that'll be.
Oh, if you want the checkpoints on what they asked for,
Yeah.
not the documents, I
think
can
that'd
give
be
you that.
helpful.
Okay.
Then maybe we can look at it and see if there's anything specific we wanna know.
Yeah.
The rates. Sorry, Consulate Ellenberg.
I was going to ask about the enterprise fund for the roads, and that comes from the builders?
There's
Is
not
it?
an enterprise, there's only 3 enterprise funds. There's not one for roads.
I know, you were talking about it earlier, and that's why
You
I'm
mean a
asking you
stabilization
about it.
fund?
Pardon?
I mean a stabilization fund?
No, the free cash for the roads that you would be doing, and then you said we would also use an enterprise fund, and I'm just curious what you meant by that.
Are you telling, we talked about the override and how we would allocate money for the roads?
Yes,
So you could put it in, you could take free cash when it's certified in the fall and decide to set up a road stabilization fund and put that money in there and then spend it from there to be able to fix whatever you're gonna fix. But roads don't qualify to be an enterprise fund.
okay, I
Yes.
was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Because when you said that, I was confused. I'm thinking, well, maybe fees from the builders would come into the enterprise or
That's a
something.
lovely idea. That's probably not legal. No, I mean, fees from builders for, say, hooking up to water and sewer would go into those
Those
enterprise
enterprise,
funds.
yes.
But nobody pays us, I mean, unless there's an agreement with a developer to pay some mitigation, like I think the Perkins project has mitigation to, but specifically build sidewalks. And so if the town gets that money, it has to build sidewalks with it or whatever it specifically says.
Mhm.
Unless the town has got an agreement for something like that, there would be no separate account.
Okay.
Who
thank you.
negotiates that mitigation? That's the planning board?
Probably the town manager and the CED director, with the planning board. I'm assuming that's how the Perkins project came to be the way it is.
I was watching one of the planning boards, and because Chase is coming, that bank.
Right.
So between the tree committee, one of the tree committee members and one of the planning boards, they made a deal, we'll fix the sidewalk and replace a tree and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they did it, and he agreed to it.
There's no formalization to how that happens.
No, I wouldn't say there is.
Interesting.
So the third enterprise account is golf, right?
Nope, it's, that was closed when the contracted it out. The third one is the transfer fund, transfer station, sorry.
Okay, Dr.
So I think your question was, how does somebody get sidewalks when a planning board does a site review?
No, I know how the mitigation money has been negotiated, or I've seen it happen on some of the meetings.
They condition, the planning board would put conditions down, and those conditions then transfer into whatever has to happen.
Sure. But I guess in the, I don't, no, we need to have a back and forth, but I guess in the case of where we're asking for mitigation funds from a project that the town may want to use towards water, the planning board is negotiating that?
No, for water and sewer, it's just, we have a specific schedule of what needs to be paid depending on what you're hooking up. Size of if you never had sewer before, there's a certain fee. If there's a size of the
Sure, but
main.
I mean, in terms of the mitigation piece itself.
So they'd set up an account in finance that said, okay, we've got, the agreement says $200,000 for sidewalks. Then finance would put an account in place.
Yes, but
And-
the planning board's negotiating the
Yes,
agreement is what I'm
yeah.
saying.
If you wanted more, what you wanted, you know how we have the density,
Yes,
and if you want more buildings, then you can get more things. Like Bob changed that. We used to have 6 required things that they could do. They could give money to affordable housing and different things. So they cut it down to 4, but you could ask to add more to that. So it's like if you want, on an acre, you want to go over so many units, then you have to give so much money to affordable housing or towards the water.
but when you say
or
you can ask,
development.
again, we're talking about the planning board.
No, that could, I think that's more Bob Ruley, because they have to pass the density.
Right.
So it would be already, he would have it already listed, like right now we have 4 listed. So if you want that, you have a choice of 4 things, like the solar panels and that. So it's already there and they would negotiate which one. Because when I asked about the affordable housing fund, Bob said that they used to have that on
I
there.
remember this.
Yeah, so you could make an amendment and add, towards the water.
So our
Because you can
CEP
do that.
director is negotiating.
I would say I think, like I said, CD director, planning board, town manager, kind of 3
Yeah,
would play a role. Slightly different roles put together.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm only pushing because I think it's just important to understand
yeah, sure.
who's
No,
negotiating that and why we're ending up with what we end up.
Yeah.
Because we got 200,000 from that, but I haven't heard anything else from other projects
They
happening.
really haven't many other projects.
Yeah.
Broad Street's just starting to come along, so there hasn't been anything significant by which you have significant mitigation.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Sorry. No comments?
Actually, I have a comment. Are you going to be addressing the TIF at all, or did you already do so before I got here?
Oh, not tonight. It's not on the agenda for tonight.
Okay,
Okay, no more public comments, then I'll make a motion, or I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Lori.
what does
Return.
the